My name's Patric Rayburn. I lead engagement for Catalyst by Wellstar. That's the innovation and venture capital company of Wellstar Health System in Georgia. If you're unfamiliar, Wellstar is one of the largest health systems in the Southeast. 11 hospitals, 5 health parks, about 325 ambulatory medical offices, treating 1.5 million Georgians annually, including this one. Catalyst was started to be an intentional step in disruption and bringing innovation into the health system quicker. Man, I see a lot of my ecosystem partners in the audience. This is great. And what we're hoping to do today is share with you all how Catalyst and Wellstar are really thinking about innovation. We are definitely in a moment of disruption. I don't know if that term is strong enough for what we're seeing right now. The first quarter has been a roller coaster for many in the innovation ecosystem. And so what we wanted to do with this panel is really highlight a couple of founders that we are really excited about and ecosystem partners that are helping us keep innovation going at the local level. So with that, I'm just going to make a couple of quick introductions and just dive right in. First, to my left, representing Atlanta, my good friend Allyson Eman. She's the CEO of Venture Atlanta. It's the premier venture capital conference in the Southeast. And by the numbers, with Allyson's leadership, 930 alumni companies have raised over $7.9 billion in capital and achieved $20.8 billion in exits. So really excited to have her here. To her left is Gareth Evans, a portfolio company of Catalyst, a company called Vecta, which is the world's first end-to-end on-site energy platform. In addition to being a portfolio company, Gareth is a strategic partner of Wellstar, helping the system think about energy efficiency across our real estate portfolios and really driving some cost savings there. And then to Gareth's left, Claire Ross, founder and CEO of Mix It Up, a health tech startup that is currently raising in Detroit. So we've got a few different innovation ecosystems represented here. So with that, I mentioned just the moment of disruption. On our website, we talk about disruption in a very positive way. It's not always experienced that way. And one of the things that we're seeing is the role that local ecosystems are playing right now may be even more important than ever. And so that's really what we wanted to focus on, and I wanted to lead off with a question to Allyson. You lead Venture Atlanta, and you're here at South by for the first time. What are you looking for, and what really brought you to the ecosystem here?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here. So my kind of joke is that I've avoided South by for 18 years. So I basically, all the years was like, I don't really want to go. But the long and short of it is Venture Atlanta is really for the entire Southeast. So if anyone is out there, a founder that is building a company from Texas to Maryland, Virginia, kind of all the way up down to Florida, we're kind of those 15 kind of states. So for me, I'm looking for founders. I'm looking for great founders that want to be part of those numbers that Patric shared and be part of, raise some more capital. I mean, like we said, we've had incredible success. So, and meet with investors that want to come to Venture Atlanta. So I'll be at Capital Factory at the Startup Crawl later, and I'm just excited to see what's happening down here. But, obviously there's people here from all over the world. So it's fantastic, and anyone is welcome to attend Venture Atlanta. You don't have to be just in the Southeast. But our event is October 15th and 16th for anyone that wants to check it out.
At Catalyst, we echo that. We're investing nationwide. As a matter of fact, the majority of our portfolio is beyond Atlanta or the state of Georgia. Claire, love your origin story of how you landed on Detroit after doing an exhaustive search of markets to launch your company. Can you tell us a little bit about Mix It Up and why you landed on Detroit?
Most definitely. And like my friends here, I'm from Atlanta. Do we have any Detroit people in the crowd today? Let's go. Thank you. Glad to see one of us here. So if you looked at metrics, you would say Detroit is not a place to go and start a company. Detroit has struggled. 2008 was a very difficult time for the city, but Detroit rose from that. And so I think one thing that we're seeing in Detroit and why I picked Detroit, I was originally looking at I'm going to say some names here, not to disrupt anyone, the New Yorks, the San Franciscos of the world to start my company in. And it was great, and I went to a networking event in one of the cities this past summer, someone asked me, so what do you do? And I said, oh, well, I'm starting my own company, really excited. And they said, oh, that's great. And they kind of walked away. And no fault of their own by any means. I thought, you know what? I'm not special here. I'm like every other entrepreneur. I need to go somewhere where I feel special and I stand out. So I started doing my research. I looked at the Ubers, the Etsy's, the Airbnbs of this world. And when they really took their companies and scaled, they went to secondary markets, and then they went to primary markets. So I came across an article from JP Morgan that rated Detroit as the #1 scene for foodies. And I said, well, let's go. So I packed my bag, went and toured in June, and moved there in July. And it's been the best decision since, so.
Gareth, you're headquartered in San Diego, but completed a tech accelerator in Atlanta, which is where we found you. Tell us a little bit about Vecta and how you straddled the country and landed in Atlanta.
Yeah, what a great room. I'm definitely not an astronaut. I'm not a heart surgeon, but I am on a mission to ensure that we've got profitable and sustainable energy for all. And so that is our mission at Vecta. We believe that every business and ultimately every resident on the planet should have control of their own energy. Today, we are all passive consumers of energy from the grid. We have no control over what it's going to cost, whether it's going to show up when we need it, or how sustainable it should be. And we can actually control all of that through deploying our own on-site energy systems. Think solar, batteries, wind turbines, even gas generators for resilience. But how do you design the optimal system for your specific needs and objectives? And then how do you go and buy that system? It's a super fragmented market, it's overwhelming, it's complex. Our mission is to simplify that buying process for businesses. You can hear an English accent. The reason I'm not in England is because there's a thing called tall poppy syndrome there. As soon as you stick your head above the parapet, it gets chopped off. And in the US, it's completely different. It's about innovation, it's about taking risks, it's about earning your stripes through actually challenging the limits and challenging the status quo. So that's what originally brought me here. Based in San Diego, because it felt like California leads the way in clean energy. It's an easy place to attract talent to. But I've been sucked over to Atlanta because the key for businesses is actually getting POs. Without POs, you don't survive. And what surprised me was how many big corporates are actually based in Atlanta. And so I was lucky enough through one of our investors, Tech Square Ventures, to be introduced to a program called Engage, of which Catalyst is a part of. And Engage, altogether, the biggest corporates in the Southeast, think Delta, Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, Wellstar, Georgia Power, mega businesses that are looking to innovate with startups. And so through that ecosystem, we've managed to run pilots, sign contracts, and really prove what we're doing and build momentum. So that's what's exciting about the Atlanta ecosystem.
Yeah, excellent segue. We were talking about public-private partnerships, which may be a little bit taboo in today's climate, but the origin story of Engage was actually a collaboration with Georgia Tech and other Tech Square Ventures and Invesco. So how that comes together and puts a platform together for, I believe it's a dozen portfolio companies that come through twice a year, of which you all were a partner. And I love that mechanism of introducing startups into large corporates that traditionally just innovate slower. And that was one of the missions of Engage, to see how the UPSs of the world can innovate quicker by infusing that with new entrepreneurial blood and spirit. Allyson, Venture Atlanta continues to grow. You set another record in terms of attendance last year. 1,600, I think, is the number for a variety of industries. What's your secret sauce? And is there anything that you would encourage Austin to think about, or anything you've seen here in Austin that you want to take
taking
back?
pictures of like all sorts of things, so I'm definitely gonna steal some stuff. No, you know what I love about Venture Atlanta? The fact that it is different every single year. So if you've been there for 18 years, and it's never the same, because I'm always looking at how do we iterate, how do we keep it fresh. Like I know Desmond and Beth and Ahmed and several people in this room were there last year, and you're not going to see the same thing this year. Last year we introduced some different sessions. For many years it was kind of everyone go to one big room and have one type of session, and we've realized that you know what, it's not a one size fits all anymore. You know, we need to have things for different types of companies, for different sectors, for the investors, and make sure that we're really meeting the needs of our attendees. So it just, you know, there's such great energy there. I mean, last year we had over 500 founders there and over 500 investors there, and the people like Wellstar and Engage that support us was the reason.
Can you speak just a second to how early the evaluation process starts for those portfolio companies, and then I always find it fascinating the diverse group that you bring together to make those evaluations that eventually results in the contract.
Yeah, so you know, the other thing that's exciting about Venture Atlanta, it's not a pay to play. So you know, either of you, well, you're in Detroit, so you can't do it. But anyway, so it's free. It's free for you to apply, and if you get selected, it's free. So for 18 years, those 930 companies, none of them paid, and we just literally helped them raise that, you know, $7.9 billion. And you know, I love that. I love that entrepreneurs have come up to me saying, "You've changed my life. You know, helped us build our business." So it's, you know, super exciting about that.
And a huge win for the city and the state. Just throwing that out there. Claire, the Detroit ecosystem is kind of flying under the radar. Can you share a little bit about how the ecosystem is helping you in your journey to raise and eventually launch?
For sure. I think one thing that's unique about the Detroit ecosystem is being a secondary market. There's a big sense of community and helping companies grow that come and start in Detroit. Originally being from Detroit, I didn't have any connections in the venture world in Detroit. When I moved there in July, we started networking with, we're at New Lab, which is located next door to Michigan Central. It's owned by Ford, if you read about the $1 billion train station innovation there. And I'm part of a group called Femology, so it's a female entrepreneurship program. But through that, our company gets visibility from Ford, from the venture-backed companies investing in New Lab, Femology, that we wouldn't have otherwise. So I would say that not only is it a small network, but people are much more, from my experience, and this is my first startup fundraising, so I know other markets are great too, but people are very willing to make introductions and open the doors. So.
I like Femology, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm inspired. I was just taking a minute to take in the dynamic nature of that particular ecosystem and how it's supporting it. I think it's fantastic.
And one thing I'll add real quick. So our platform, so what makes it up is, just to give you a little background. When you go to look for a restaurant right now, probably while you're here at South by Southwest, you get on Google, you look for restaurants, then you look at ratings, reviews, you look at menus, you might look at social media, and then you book a table, right? The average person takes 20 minutes, the average couple takes 40 minutes, and then a group of people, man, that goes hours. And you have to choose. So what Mix It Up does is we streamline everything into one app. So we recommend restaurants based on your taste profile, dining preferences. So with that being said, restaurants pay to be on our platform. And one thing that's been really interesting is people are so willing to connect you with local restaurants. When Resi launched, they had 5 restaurants on their platform. We have 31 and we're launching this month. So it's really exciting just to see the investment from the city, just in terms of getting customers as well.
Helpful, and movie selection is the same, for sure. Okay, public-private partnerships. If I could dip my toe into these shark-infested waters. You know, ecosystems don't develop by themselves. Many times they rely on support from industry, from local, state, and federal agencies, the NGO space, nonprofits. And a lot of this is in flux right now. We have been activating here because of our federal partners for many years, and the CDC's in our backyard. So we are feeling this moment acutely in what's happening in healthcare. And so Gareth, I will just channel this because renewable energy and alternative energy has got to be right alongside healthcare in terms of the complex moment we find ourselves in. And I would love to hear how you and Vecta are thinking about the moment, how this impacts you as a startup, and what the road ahead looks like.
Yeah, I think very interesting times. You know, I'm fundraising right now as well, and literally every question in the last month has been, what impact is the administration going to have on your business, on the incentives, on tariffs? How is that going to impact the industry? I think what's very interesting is energy is literally the lifeblood of everything we do. Without energy, we don't exist. Most people don't realize that utility power today, on average across the whole of the US, rates have gone up 23% in the last 4 years. So if you're trying to run a business and your rates are going up 5% this year, 10% next year, 8% the year later, impossible to manage, very challenging to manage your cost base. We suffer $150 billion worth of outage impacts as an economy every year as a result of aging grid infrastructure. And from a sustainability perspective, what we see time and time again is businesses and communities that deploy these systems and realize more sustainable outcomes can increase their share price by 6%. They can retain their employees by 50% or more. They can attract better customers and retain those customers 20% more than their peers. So these are all critical, but the education and awareness of the status quo, being willing to challenge a system that has operated the same way for 100 years, is actually very hard for people to wrap their heads around. And change management is super hard. 12% of change management programs are successful. 2% of sustainability change management programs are successful. And so how do we ensure that people can realize these incredible benefits in a super simple way? But the noise in the ecosystem definitely confuses that. And I think right now what we're seeing is the noise distracts from the macro trend that our energy system is broken, it's only going to get worse, and we need to actually focus on the macro scenario that we need to take a centralized energy system and create a more distributed energy future. There isn't a single centralized system on the planet that has survived. Think telephone wires to cell phones, think cloud versus having your own server in your basement. It's the same for energy. We no longer need to rely on poles and wires, but we also need the incentives, the education, the support, the partners to actually go and realize this, challenge the limits, and adapt purposefully to ensure that we can actually overcome the friction in the system, which is status quo.
I'm going to chalk up my AI reference right now. What's AI doing and the data centers doing to demand for energy in the U.S.?
Yeah, the supply-demand challenge is like on people's mind. What I would say is, data centers need a lot of energy, and that is certainly a critical factor. This administration is certainly supporting more reshoring of manufacturing, more reshoring of data centers. All of that demands power. I think what people aren't talking about is that the cost of generating energy has actually come down year on year for many years. But the cost to deliver that power just keeps going up infinitely more. Everyone's talking about nuclear, gas, how do we pump, baby pump, how do we create more oil and gas? That actually doesn't help us solve the problem. We need to get that energy to where it's needed. That's the vulnerable part of the ecosystem. And so AI is a user of the energy, but it's also actually a great benefit in the sense that all of this requires a lot of smarts, a lot of complex thinking. We use AI every day in our platform to help people navigate where should I build, what should I build, who should I build through, when should I do it, who should I finance with. So it's like super exciting times, and I think all of these are very counter-conflict risks, opportunities.
Sure. Claire, are you seeing any implications? Do you see any challenges that this current moment we're in presents to you as a founder in a very different industry and space?
AI-wise or
economically?
Just
economically, just where we're at right now.
Well, I'm someone that loves history, so my prior life, not that any of you asked, was in commercial real estate. And so when, unfortunately, COVID hit in March of 2020, everyone said, I was in office leasing, everyone said, no one's gonna lease office space, everyone's gonna work from home, it's over. And I thought, that's interesting. So I started doing research, and I came across an article from NPR that said that when the Spanish influenza came in 1919, and I'm going somewhere with this, that it took 5 years for the office market to recover. And so if we look where we are today, 5 years ago, March of 2020, we're all here today in a room, fortunately due to technology and advancement. So with the funding market, I, again, went back and said, okay, so let's look at history and let's see what's going on. If you look back, Axios just published an article today, the Wall Street Journal and New York Times in the past few weeks, have lent itself that while grants, government funding may be potentially cutting back, we're also seeing that funding from venture capital is going to be increasing likely. So it's interesting to see that. So I'm optimistic about it, but I like to be
That's
optimistic.
a good thing for all of us.
I'd just say, Patrick, it is interesting that the funding definitely has stalled in the sense that we were running a program called Energy Shared with the Department of Energy, and this was to support Alaskan communities to get off diesel and assess how could they generate and store energy in a renewable way, how could they finance those systems so they're no longer reliant on grants and things like that. But the funding is currently paused, and we actually don't know whether the program will go forward. And so this is the hesitation in the market. Everyone's kind of stalled a little bit, waiting for some clarity.
And that's real. I don't want to gloss over for sure. Allyson, the genesis of Venture Atlanta, CEO Council, Technology Association of Georgia, and the Metro Area Chamber of Commerce coming together to create Venture Atlanta that now 18
years
later is doing what it's doing. And Mayor Andre Diggins is putting significant effort into turning Atlanta into a top 5 tech hub, which, again, by the numbers, Atlanta's launching 200 companies a year. We got to launch 2,000 a year to hit that mark.
I think that 200 is not right.
It's not right. It's debatable. But can you speak to that? What are you seeing at the local ecosystem level for this? Do you see any taking the foot off the gas in terms of the importance of the moment that Mayor's office or the local ecosystem is having for innovation?
I think Atlanta is just full steam ahead. So obviously our mayor, Andre Dickens, he calls himself the tech mayor, and he's a Georgia Tech grad, and he is just full steam ahead on innovation and what he's done with, affordable housing groups and, different things. And there's so many incredible programs like Engage and incubators and different groups that target, women or climate tech or different things that I think Atlanta's just continuing to show its power. So Atlanta has been the transaction alley, like the payment hub. And, we've been known for cyber or fintech or different things, but now we're getting known for climate tech. And, we're going to continue to look at different sectors, that'll keep things fresh. But, we got a long way to go to get to be a top 5 startup hub. And what's exciting and what's really unique about Atlanta is collaboration, is that everyone works together. Everyone's kind of, the mayor called us together, it was a couple weeks ago. We were at an event, and it was like, we're all going to work together. We're all going to do this. And that's really unique. And it sounds like, it could be Detroit and some of these other markets probably do similar things. Whereas I was at an event a couple years ago, and there was an investor from San Francisco, and he goes, our markets would never collaborate. They would never say, make sure that there wasn't 10 exact investor events at the same time. But we say, how can we support you? How can we support you? How can we support you? And I think that's our secret sauce.
And it certainly helps from a participatory factor. Quick plug for Catalyst. We are actively deploying capital to pre-seed and Series A, so startups in 6 different focus areas, so not just in the health tech space. One of the activities that we lean into is the Advanced Technology Development Center of Georgia, the ATDC, which is literally the state of Georgia's tech incubator. It's, again, literally housed in the same facility as our Innovation Center in Tech Square. Interestingly, this segues into kind of a multi-industry approach to innovation that we're using. We are the premier sponsor of the health tech vertical. 2 other strategic focus areas of Catalyst are supply chain and sustainability. And ATDC has 2 of those verticals. So one of the ways that we're continuing to lean in to this particular moment is seeing how we can support the founders and learn more and perhaps invest in startups that are in those verticals. Because we believe not all healthcare problems are solved by healthcare solutions. So we're investing beyond health tech. So I'm going to segue into a multi-industry, multi-sector approach. Claire, earlier today, the speaker from Deloitte, she's still here. Fascinating, looking at the intersection of health and food. Today's theme is the future of health. I was wondering if you could just speak to how something that may not be considered a health tech company may play in the space?
No, for sure. So I have had celiac disease. I can't have gluten since I was 6 years old. So back in the day, it wasn't a thing. So you'd go to a restaurant and people would say, they'd send the chef out, fancy restaurant or simple diner, and they'd say, okay, what do you want? They'd put everything aside, they'd make you food. And then today they hand you a menu that says, here's your gluten-free options, have fun. You're like, well, thanks. But when you go to look on Google, Google just gives you whoever pays to be at the top, pay to play, right? So you get Starbucks. If you search for gluten-free bakeries near me, you're gonna get Starbucks, you're gonna get a cafe that's one of the best in the city, which is all great, but what about the local shops where you can support the local economy? So I was speaking with, it was interesting, there was a panel recently in Detroit. A woman approached me afterwards. She was an executive with Salesforce, and she said, I have Hashimoto's, and she said, one of my problems when I travel is I look at these restaurant menus and I can't tell if they have what I can accommodate and eat. And so what we're doing with Mix It Up is we're providing people that have dietary restrictions the opportunity to find restaurants based on their preferences. Unlike other places, we are only featuring local restaurants. There's no SEO optimization. It's you sign up and you're on our platform and you go to search for a restaurant, you're gonna get the best local spots that meet your dietary needs. So I wanna be able to go out with friends and not awkwardly look at a menu and say, I can't have anything, can we go somewhere else? I want to feel comfortable, and I want everyone else that has dietary restrictions to have the same experience. So that's one of our big efforts with Mix It Up, and hopefully we'll work with the different departments and getting certifications for restaurants to be able to get stamps that they meet dietary levels.
Can I just say, I love that. Our son's allergic to dairy, but anaphylactic allergic. So we've ended up in ER quite a lot of times by eating at a restaurant, being told that it should be dairy-free and it's not. And I just say, like, humanizing all of these connections is super important, isn't it? And I think particularly when we talk about sustainability, people hear energy transition, they hear climate change, and they kind of gloss over these days because we're beating them over the head with it. But the reality is you can actually connect a lot of this to lives saved. And I was just saying to Patrick, we ran an analysis on a small solar system for a business, and you can translate that into a 750 kilowatt system will result in 28 years of lives saved. So there are economic benefits, but if you can actually then promote the fact that you can give 10 people an extra 3 years of life with their family, that's actually super interesting. So how do we start thinking more holistically about connecting finance to humanistic impacts?
I'll just add, going back to the dairy thing, so all that, like when you search for a restaurant, it's supposed to be, dairy-free, have lactose options. It all goes back to the data, right? So right now, the platforms that are out there are Google, which their business profiles are made for all different dry cleaners, all that. Are they just reservation-based? No one's actually creating a database where they actually track and regulate whether or not something actually meets dietary restrictions. So that's something that's really interesting that we're trying to change with Mix It Up, is collecting that data and ensuring it's accurate.
So what markets are you going to move into next?
Atlanta's actually number 2 on the list, so.
Just making sure.
I was just gonna, love it, thank you. I was just gonna channel both of you, Gareth and Claire. One of the craziest projects that we worked on at Wellstar was literally installing a hydroponic farm at our corporate office. And I have Dr. Hank Capps, who's CIDO of Wellstar and Catalyst, to thank for that. But working on that project, the team looked at us like we had 3 heads for wanting to install this. It's an upcycled shipping container that's literally in our corporate headquarters backyard, and it's cranking out like 200 pounds of veggies a week that we use in the bistro, which feeds several bistros within our system. So love the connection. I think that there's a lot more in there that, excuse me, that we can explore. Allyson, Venture Atlanta, you mentioned earlier that it brings a variety of industries together. So is there anything that you can speak to in terms of the energy that such a room has when you don't just have, let's say, people from health tech or people from climate tech, et cetera, collaborating to move something forward like Venture Atlanta?
Think about this question. The energy that people have, like in those different groups?
Maybe I'll frame it in a different way. Forgive me. There's not specific verticals within Venture Atlanta, right? Like you don't look at the industry from a vertical perspective, and that's a distinct choice.
Yes. So, we've definitely been kind of all things tech. So it's funny, like today someone said to me, do you guys do CPG? We don't. Like we actually we've been very specific on, we're not a bio conference, we're not a pharma conference, we're not a life science conference. We're kind of all things tech. But we're all things tech. We've had electric cars, we've had meal delivery services, and we've been very intentional because we want to attract investors that appeal to all those different sectors. So if we just had a health focus or we just had an energy, focus, it would just be one distinct type of investor. And we wanted, when we were very deliberate about this over the years was, let's have everybody. Let's have all the sectors. And we also attract all the stages of companies. So I think that's really important, that we do seed stage companies, we do early stage companies, we do companies that are, looking for $50 million. So we're kind of a little bit trying to be the all things to all people. But I think I love the fact that it's not just a health conference or not just a climate conference or not just a food tech conference, because those platforms have their place and they're phenomenal. But for us, we could kind of be the catch-all.
Got it. Love it. And it
Not a good answer or not.
It's great, and it's working, which is the bigger thing. Okay, last question, because I literally see the food stacked over here for lunch. I just want to go down the line. For the entrepreneurs, investors, or ecosystems building in the audience, is there any advice that you would lend them in this particular moment to build and support their local ecosystem?
Get out there and network. That's fine. Go ahead.
I'd say create contracts, find a way to connect buyers to startups. That's how we make the system work. That's how we prove concepts, and that's how we get things done.
This will go back to what I said a little bit earlier, but data is key. We all love talking about AI, but AI is only as good as the data it's built on. So investor or founder, if you're looking at an AI company or looking to start one, look at the data that you're sourcing, because you can really create a lot of value with that data. Everyone's doing AI. AI is always changing. The Resi CEO just came out saying that restaurants, and talking with restaurant owners, I've seen this too, with now that you can just get on ChatGPT and make a reservation on that. There's a lot of no-shows now. Now they're asking for your credit card. So it's a term that's evolving, and we don't know what it is, and just be adaptable and amenable to AI.